Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff Mom Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio. Today is Thursday, which means it's time for another happy hour. Which means, yes. It's exciting here because this could just be a one-off, but it's chillier here in Atlanta today. We're both wearing hoodies.
Yes.
Yes. And I'm excited. I don't know how long I'll be saying that, but for now.
Yeah. No, the fall is perfect. So I'm very excited because that means I can get away with all of my grandma cardigans. The poncho I've been wearing all summer and dying is now going to be comfortable. And I'm so excited about this, as well as the fact that all of my air is off because I can just open a window to get that breeze.
Yes. That's what I
did that last night, so I had to get out my comforter. Y'all, I had to get out my comforter, Buffy comforter, which we've had for a while now, and I still love. That was not trying to be a promotion or anything. But all I'm about to say is I love fall. I hate winter. That should be stated.
Yeah, you do not like cold. I know that's about you.
I do have my electric blanket in the ready. Like it's next to me in a chair, plugged up, ready to go.
I love when you've told me more than once that is your like most treasured purchase.
With the comfy.
But also I love when I dog sat Peaches and you were like, here's the electric blanket. And it was like summer.
I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you're talking about. It was
very kind.
It was the beginning of warm season. It was still kind of cold at nights.
That's true. I appreciate it nonetheless. Maybe next time. So what are you sipping on, Samantha?
Today, because I am feeling this nice chill in the air and we are wearing hoodies, I decided to go with my red wine. It just felt very fall. And so I didn't want anything iced right now. And this is kind of a delight for me. So I went back to my first love, which is a classic Chianti.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's kind of...
I love the deep and bold.
Yeah. Oh, me too. And that's kind of, unfortunately or fortunately, Silence of the Lambs really popularized Chianti. So,
See, I went to Tuscany after I graduated college and really loved everything. Of course, this is not necessarily Tuscany wine because they're a little lighter typically, but all of that made me fall in love with Italian wines and Italian reds. So I'm really pretentious right now, but I can't help it. I loved it.
No, that's what you love. Got great wine. I too love Italian wines. I love most. I'm more of like a flavor note person. So if it's like a bold red, then I'll probably like it. I am drinking grapefruit and gin and basil and sparkling water. And it's very nice. It's very tart though. It's doing that mouth-watering thing that we've talked about before.
So wait, did you just make a yub nub?
Mostly, but I didn't put. It doesn't have nearly as much gin. No, normally I just put 2 shots of gin in that. This is 1 shot.
Keeping it healthy.
I do that for you.
Thank you.
And also doesn't have pepper in it, which I normally put in yub nub. Yes, much
you
less
do that
basil
for me because I
well.
will fall asleep faster if you decide
I want people to have
shots.
a fun time. I want people to have a fun time. I'm not trying to get anybody
Take
super
anybody
drunk.
out.
Yeah, no, I really am not. I've learned my lesson on that. And by that I just mean like sometimes you forget. You're like, oh, a shot is this much, but you should adjust it for the taste of the people around you.
The people around you.
Yes. So this is a kind of lighthearted follow-up because we've been doing some tough episodes lately, and they've been great, and they're so worthwhile to talk about. But in particular, this one is kind of a follow-up to the whole not pretty enough thing about sexual assault that we did for a Monday Mini. And so many of you were so kind and you wrote in, and we're probably going to feature some of those replies in a future listener mail episode. But kind of to lighten things up a bit, I wanted to talk about ugly pictures.
Oh, this is my wheelhouse. Let's go.
I know. I'm so excited because you immediately had like a different avenue, and I can't wait to talk about it. But I was thinking about how fun and kind of empowering it can be to take like the ugliest picture possible. And often when I'm talking about this, because I do want to be clear that this is usually in what I'm thinking of specifically for you. You can post it if you want. I have a friend who has a whole account that's just ugly pictures, and it's beautiful and I love it. But this is different than like when the internet tears apart a woman for having like, my God, the smallest amount of fat or whatever. That is not that's not even an ugly picture, but it's different than what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you like make the grossest face and get in the worst light and try to really make just the best ugly picture. And when I say it's empowering, I think it is because a lot of the times for women, we feel a pressure like you've got to look good and your beauty is your value. And if you don't look good, like everyone's going to be calling you names or whatever it is. But when you just lean in and you're like, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to take this really ugly picture. It can be surprisingly powerful and liberating.
That's how I always take pictures. I am not a fan of pictures in general, but I will say that for me, I love the scrunching of the face and the weird looks. And those are my wheelhouse. Like that's what I will do. And I think any of the listeners who have seen some of the pictures of you and I, that is the face I typically make because it just makes me happy.
Yes. Yeah. But that's about you. I guess that's kind of the point, is it makes you happy. So much of what we do, or what I will say most women, but particularly me, I don't want to say for everybody, but it is, even if you don't want it to be, it is about like other people, and particularly maybe the male gaze. And this is so not. And it feels so fun. A couple years ago, me and some good friends of mine spent hours laughing and taking the ugliest pictures possible. And like later you'd open your phone and somehow they'd gotten into it and taken like an ugly picture on it, and you'd open it. And it was so fun and so funny. And it is this like trust you place in someone else and this vulnerability. But instead of being like, oh, that's disgusting, you're like, oh, this is a beautiful woman that I love and she's so funny. Like, I don't know. It's hard to describe, but it's hard. I couldn't have told you why it was so funny and fun. It did feel kind of like an act of defiance. It did feel like this beautiful moment of trust between all of us, because we all knew like no one's going to post that picture without you wanting to. No one's going to say like, oh, wow, how ugly you are, unless it's like an impressed, like how ugly you were able to make your face. It's more about like being silly and kind of shrugging off this pressure to feel beautiful all of the time. And I do think this is also so many things we talk about. I hesitate because I feel like I have to put asterisks after everything, because I do get like the difference between taking a purposely ugly picture, maybe because you think like you can't take a pretty picture, or it's kind of a security measure, and you feel like you're going to be judged, so you might as well take kind of a silly picture. And also just like taking a picture of yourself and thinking like, oh, I'm really ugly, like feeling it in your soul. And we've all had that horrifying moment of when you open your phone and the camera is facing you and not outwards. And you're like, oh gosh. So that's different than what I'm talking about. And those are issues that we have discussed and probably will discuss again, because it does impact all of us. But I'm talking about like, just going out and just taking this really purposefully ugly, silly picture for you and for your friends.
Right. Which I think is fantastic. Yeah. And I did mention to you about the meme, but I think it was just, I have a lot of photos that people tag me in, but I'm like, I don't like that photo, so I'm going to hide it, essentially.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And like it said Libra seasons here, which means, oh, do not like this photo. It will stay hidden. Like that was the meme. I was like, okay, that's a little too real. I don't need your judgment. Slash, I choose what I want to be photoed. I have a weird thing with photos, though, in general, which is hilarious because my partner is a photographer, and I'm like, don't you dare. I will kill you.
That is interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like a lot of the pictures I have of you, you are making kind of a snarky face or a weird, like, horror face.
Well, and what's so funny is so the ones that I'm being tagged in, oftentimes it's because I'm not in the photo, I'm behind the camera because they know don't want to be in the picture. So I'm like, here. Let me take a picture for you. I got you. And they call me the photographer because I'm like, nah, this is the best way of not being in any of the photos. Unless I choose to be really silly.
Yes. I mean, yeah, there is definitely an aspect of feeling like, you know what, if I'm going to be in a picture, because I feel like my thing is a lot of times when I think I've taken a good picture or a sexy picture, heaven forbid, it's not. And so a silly picture is a good way to kind of head that off.
I will say, I don't know if I've ever attempted to do a sexy picture. Like, that's not in my wheelhouse to me. Even, especially if someone tells me to be sexy, I automatically stop. And I say that, and no one's ever so we did a photo shoot, and our photographer, he was wonderful. He was so great, and he was willing to meet me where I was because he was like, you're goofy. And I'm trying to figure out in my past, I'm like, I wonder how really, he was like, why can't you just be still type of level? But if he had at any point tried to tell me to be sexy, I think I would have just sat there and the most pouty, scrunched up triple chin face that I could make, or maybe even go into the grudge level of oh, here we go. I'm going to scare the shit out of everybody instead of trying to be sexy. Because that to me is just such a weird, not because I think it's weird to take sexy pictures. For me and my self-esteem issues, that doesn't exist in me. So my automatic self-deprecating mechanism is to be as silly as possible, to the point that people will get annoyed with me. Like, I just want a good picture. And I'm like, but I don't want to be in this picture. I don't know how to tell you this.
I feel like a lot of times I'll get so self-conscious when people are taking pictures, and I'll think, about everything, every flaw that I see, and every time I've tried. I mean, my sexy pictures are so, when I say that, it just means I try to look sexy in my face. But I have taken what I consider sexy cosplay photos. But I do, every time, it never looks how I think it's going to look. And that makes me wonder if I'm trying to emulate something that doesn't work for me. Because like you were saying, I think there's an authenticity that works in photos. If the photographer was like, oh, I can see you're goofy, and that's going to be a better photo than trying to force something that you don't feel or makes you uncomfortable. So, I mean, all that makes sense to me. And I think that, being photographed can be just a stressful experience anyway. So
I hate it.
I do too.
I will be very conscientious when something is pointing, a screen is pointing towards me.
Yeah.
My partner would just try to take pictures in order to get a balance and just to see the lighting, and I will scream at him because I don't want to have anything out there. And God forbid, even to the point that having a phone, so we talked about sex before, we've talked about all of these things, and having relationships with people, long distance relationships, and what people would do. I'm I would struggle. That wouldn't be a thing that I can do. It's just, there's no such picture of me out there. And of course, maybe it's because I've heard all the horror stories. And I'm like, hell nah. But I don't feel sexy. So I don't feel like that's the way, I would communicate my sexiness, is sending a picture. So that all of that is ingrained. Of course, again, this is everything to do with self-esteem more so than anything else. And I completely admit that. But again, it is also a self-defense mechanism in order to get past this and not even have to address it in general. I just don't want that to be associated with me, not because I think it's shameful, but more so that I'm ashamed of myself as being in that direction. And that's a whole bigger conversation that I'm taking it to a darker place, I know. But there is that layered bit of, there's so much to this that has everything to do with what I see myself and what people have said of me. And so I can't let that go, whether it's being thick or being, any of those things. Being Asian, even to me, had a whole different connotation of being not as sexy, not as glamorous, or being too sexy and completely sexualized. And so it's kind of like both of those things that I'm like, I don't know what to do. So therefore, I'm going to do this instead and be as ugly as I can be, but make it a joke.
Right. Yeah, no, that all makes perfect sense to me. And I meant for this to be a lighthearted one, and it has. But there is so much stuff like that. And when you're talking about photography or someone seeing this image of you, like, you can't control how they consume it and what they attach to you. And a lot of times that does have to do with how we've been socialized, or cultural norms, or the patriarchy, or white supremacy, all that stuff. You can't control that. And that, especially for women in any marginalized intersection, marginalized people, it can feel like it just puts more in your head than like taking a simple photo. Like, it's another thing that you have all of these other considerations going on in your head. And it does, what we've been talking about is, you feeling this really self-conscious. And that kind of reminds me again of like when I step outside and I just immediately feel like this weight of the male gaze. It's the kind of the same thing.
Right.
Of that feels like it's out of my control.
Right. And honestly, in this world of social media, and we talked about it a little before, but typically any of this, and we talked about it with facial recognition as well, the type of technology that is used for our phones and for photography is for white people. And so if you've never had a really good photo because it doesn't pick up your pigment, or it doesn't do the justice that it needs to, or people don't take the effort to find the right lighting, you don't want that. You don't want that to be a thing. And then also having that standard culture, like, again, we talked a little bit about how whiteness is so favored, especially in like Korean cultures typically. And you see it with the pop stars, and I love K-pop, don't get me wrong, but they definitely lean into the white skin and being idolizing that level of pigment. And so therefore, you don't love it as much. Of course, I did grow up in the South where the white women all wanted to be tan and, did their microaggression towards me because I was automatically browner than them, no matter what. And that was my contribution of being worth of something, is because I was able to tan easily for the Southern women who was trying to lay in the tanning beds. So I have, like, of course, a different connotation of it, what I grew up with. But there is this level of trying to fit into that narrative, and then having this kind of juxtaposition of being not so serious in something that's supposed to be fun, but it's not created for fun for you or your culture. Oh, I'm taking it really into a dark path. I'm so sorry.
No. This
the
is...
wine, people. Just kidding.
It's all we're talking about. And that's why, like I said, asterisk, 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 because nothing is, so simple. And that's why, like, I recommend, go purposefully take an ugly photo and do it with friends that you really trust. But yeah, I wouldn't share it. Like, the internet, again, you can't control who will take it. And, scarily enough, now people can Photoshop things and edit things, and just always be aware of what you're posting. I hate that we have to worry about that. I don't want to sound like a fearmonger, but we do. But yeah, it can be really fun and liberating to just kind of like let all that go for just a minute and take a really see how ugly you can go.
It is fun. And again, on the deeper note, for me, it's about controlling the narrative. And taking that power away from others and putting it to my own power. And I am a bit of a controlling person. So there that is.
Right. I am as well. And I really do think that makes sense. This would not be nearly as fun if I hadn't had this idea, when I hadn't had friends who like enjoyed it and thought it was funny and knew me and just were like, oh yeah, that's very almost like impressed like what you can do. That being said, I do have a bunch, and I'm going to look through them. If I can find one, maybe I'll post one.
I think we need to post some of ours, and then listeners, we need you to post yours. I love the good photos. Gimme.
Yes. But only if you're comfortable with it.
Only if you're happy with it.
Comfortable.
True story.
Yeah, exactly.
I think our people know, though. They know. They're like, it's because I love myself. Here you go.
Yes.
They know.
Yes. It's an act of love. So listeners, however you want to get those to us, if you feel comfortable, you can email us at stephanie@momstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram at Stuff Mom Never Told You. Thanks as always to our super producer, Christina.
One of the best.
Yes. And thanks to you for listening. Stuff Mom Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.